Isaac, thanks for coming in.
Of course, I'm really excited. Really excited.
Tell me about the squash season.
It was really fun. We lost 4 seniors from last year. We lost our one.
Yeah, Tommy, right?
Yeah, we lost Tommy.
Is he the one last year?
He was the one last year. Then we lost Charlie Fenwick and Jason Sutton, who played 3 and 4, and then we lost Siraj, who played 7. So, at least in my time, that was the most changeover we've ever had.
Those guys were good. That was a good class.
It was a very good class. They were all in varsity since freshman year. So
I remember when I first got to Gilman, I was coaching middle school squash, and all those guys were like 7th graders, and I would get in the court and hit around with them, and they'd all kick my butt, and I was like, wow.
It was a really strong class,
level
for sure. So it was kind of tough losing them, but we brought up a bunch of new guys, and we finished where we wanted to finish. So that was really fun.
So what was the end of the season like? How did you perform, I guess, in the national level or in some of the tournaments you were in?
Yeah, so it's weird for me because there's kind of like the parallel of playing for the team, but then I also have all my individual tournaments. So I had back-to-back weeks. We had the Maryland playoffs and championships, individuals. Then I went to Houston and played a tournament. Then we had our nationals as a team, and then my nationals are not this weekend, but next weekend.
Oh.
So it's kind of been like a busy end of the season.
Those are individual nationals.
Yeah, so there's the team nationals, and then I have my own. And we snuck into Division I. We were the last seed, but we upset St. Paul's up in New Hampshire, so that was a big upset. And then we lost our last match, but we finished 13th instead of 16th, so we kind of outdid our seed, which was very exciting.
Okay, that's good.
We weren't expecting much going into D1.
How'd you get into squash? Did you grow up playing?
So I kind of grew up playing a lot of different sports, but my dad's colleague at work, she was a big squash player. She's in like the Maryland Squash Hall of Fame. She's older now. And I took lessons with Michael Maloney when we were 5 probably. We started playing lessons, and then he kept it up a little bit and kind of stopped, and I kept going. But I don't know exactly. I think we were around 5. We were young, and we started playing with her on the RPCS courts.
Oh, wow.
A long time ago, and she would give us lessons, and she'd bake us cookies, and we were very excited about that.
Is that Tutrone? Is that who that is?
No, it's Vaughn Schmidt.
Vaughn Schmidt.
I don't know if you know that name at all.
I don't know. Yeah, I remember being in the Roland Park courts. Where they have like 5 or 6 courts in there.
Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a lot of memory of that. I've heard that story many times.
Interesting.
But it was a cool little full circle moment. We played together in the Maryland State mixed doubles tournament this year. So that was fun. I got to play with her. She's a good doubles player.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, squash is a great game because you can play it for the rest of your life. It is unlike, I feel like doubles tennis, or I've been playing padel recently, which is really fun, or pickleball.
You play in the Maryland Sportsplex?
Yes.
Where you play? Yeah.
There's one court in there. I think they're building more, but padel is, I would say, and I've only played it 3 or 4 times so far, maybe the most fun racket sport I've ever played.
I'm excited. It's actually a squash guy who owns that court and leases it out.
Yes.
So, and I know him well, so he's been trying to get me to play. So I need to try it out.
You'd like it. I mean, it's a great mix between paddle tennis, and squash.
And you see those videos, the guys like running outside of the court.
Yeah, you can run outside the court, which we haven't done yet. I mean, but you can slam it out of the court, and it's your point. It's really good cardio. You're running around, you're sweating.
No, I'm excited to try for sure.
It's fun. But squash, I feel like it is a lifetime sport for sure, but it's tough on your body, like knees, hips, your joints from bending and getting in those corners.
I would say you definitely have to. I don't think there are many guys that have played for a long time that have escaped injuries. They happen. But it is, you kind of make that transition point at a certain point and kind of move to doubles, and then you can play doubles for a long, long time.
Yes. What is your training regimen or your routine before you get into the squash court?
Like before matches?
Yeah, like before you're training or before you're getting in there. How do you warm up? How do you get yourself ready for all the sprinting and the quick twitch?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it was weird. Warming up is kind of a recent thing for me, which probably isn't great, but I feel like as I've grown, I kind of needed it a little bit more. And I used to just be able to hop on a court and run around. But now I think it's similar to a lot of other sports. You're doing stretching, you're rolling out, you're getting yourself as kind of limber as you can. And then it's a lot of that kind of quick muscle movements where you're doing, either like kind of aerobic lunge type things or squatting, and you're just trying to get yourself firing as much as you can. And I don't know if you know what ghosting is.
Ghosting, yes.
So you're kind of mimicking a squash type movement, and you can do that. Like where we play these tournaments are usually in gyms, and you find, whatever Zumba room you can, and you're doing ghosting, and you're getting yourself, you're making the movements as similar to a match as you can before you go on.
And you're thinking about the angles a little bit of how you're going to strike the ball.
I think so. I think I've started kind of taking, and this is probably similar for a lot of other sports, taking 5 minutes and you kind of visualize what you want to, how you want to feel when you're hitting a shot, or picturing what you want the shot to do. It's probably similar for lacrosse. So that's something I've started doing recently, and I think it's pretty helpful. So yeah, you're kind of picturing what you want to be doing with the ball and how you want to be moving, and that's something I've started to do recently. But
now, when you play somebody in this national tournament, which I'm sure you've played in before, and you know the type of guy that you're playing, or you've heard the name before, you see the rankings, which is big in squash, right? Are you thinking about, oh, this person is not so great with the backhand in this corner, or he's not great getting from the back wall to the front wall, and preparing yourself about, kind of game plan, how am I going to beat this person?
Yeah, you definitely are. I mean, it's nice that a lot of the big tournaments are all filmed, so you kind of have film on all these guys who are playing. And it used to be pretty simple, like, this guy cannot hit a backhand, hit everything to his backhand, and to win the match. And it's definitely, everyone's so solid that they have a lot smaller weaknesses than that.
Yeah.
So it's tough to kind of find things, but I'll either watch matches alone or with my dad or with a coach, and you maybe just find things. If you put him under a lot of pressure, he'll make mistakes here, or he doesn't like to play longer rallies, he likes to go for shots. But it's tough. It's not really black and white anymore
because everyone's good at everything.
Everyone's base is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And everyone's pretty solid all over the place. So it's tough to find specific things, but
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, do you focus more on yourself and your game before you play somebody pretty good, or do you think about the ways that you can exploit their weaknesses more, or is it a combination of both?
I would say it's a combination. For me, and this is probably different from other players, it kind of screws with my head to be focusing too much on the other guys. So I kind of go into it watching. Yes, I'll watch film on other guys, but I'll also watch film on matches where I feel like I'm playing well and try to picture that and replicate that. So I feel like I'm always thinking a little bit more about myself going into it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common with racket sports because in the end of the day, it's a game against yourself, right? And it's a game against your own mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things that I think about sometimes is like trying to get in the other person's head a little bit.
Yeah.
Because racket sports, you can become so frustrated and just lose your game.
Exactly.
Does that ever happen to you where you're not playing well, you're losing points, and you just fall behind and blow it? Or is there a way for you to reset yourself mid-match to getting back to where you need to be?
So the breaks in games are definitely good places to reset, but I've definitely had games where I'll go down maybe. You played 11 points, and I'll go down maybe 6-1, 7-1, and it's really tough to pull yourself out of that hole. So sometimes, and this is probably not the greatest strategy, you kind of like give up on the game. Like maybe I don't have this game, and you try to play the last couple points. I forget what coach this is, but some coach always told me there's something about if you're up against a guy, maybe 10-1, 10-2, and they bring it back to 10-5, doesn't matter if you win that game or not. They're just in the back of their head is, wow, I just lost 5 out of the last 6 points or 4 out of the last 6 points. Doesn't matter if you win the game. So sometimes it's about just making that push at the end of the games the best you can, even if you know that maybe you'll lose one of the games. And you're playing 3 to 5 games. You have, other opportunities to win games, but it's just about making it as tough for them as you can, even when you get in those holes. That I think that's when it kind of messes with them and they start overthinking. Even if you lose a game and go down 1-0 or 2-0 in a match.
Yeah, like all racket sports, it's primarily mental. It's like 90% mental, 10%
definitely.
skill.
Yeah, so mental. I mean, it's so easy to just rattle off mistakes and lose points incredibly quickly.
And the more you start thinking, the more you fall behind. You just
Exactly.
can't think, which is really hard to do when you're out there and there's a lot of pressure. So let me ask you about your training a little bit more and sort of what you do in the off season, because I feel like if you play squash all year round, it does take a toll on the body. Is there any way that you work on cardio, you work on you know, agility in the off season?
I do. The tough thing about squash is it's such a long season outside of school, and then school overlaps with my stuff outside. Like our first tournament of the year is first weekend of September, is Labor Day weekend, and then our last tournament will be middle of March. So that whole season, I'm playing tournaments once a month out of school, basically, and then you have Gilman stuff on top of that for that 3-month span of the winter season. So then when I get, usually my schedule last year was from that March 15th to maybe the time schools end, I kind of take a break from squash, definitely.
Yep.
And I'll be in the gym and maybe I'll go and run just so I stay in shape, but I try not to touch a squash racket for that. That's maybe a month and a half, 2 months, because I feel like I need to reset after an 8-month season. And then we go into the summer, and I would say I'm training just like I am in season in the summer.
Oh, wow.
Like I'm playing, and maybe it'll be different this summer because I'm kind of working some camps instead of, being a part of the camps.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a little different, but yeah, last summer I went on a trip to Argentina. So we spent about a month in Argentina and then maybe a month in total.
Playing squash.
Playing squash too. It was the Pan Am Games. And that was really fun, but that's a month where you're training and then you're playing, and that's kind of just like you're in the middle of the normal season.
I didn't know. Is Argentina pretty good at squash?
They're okay. The Pan Am's is in a bunch of different countries. It's in a different country every year. So I happened to qualify last year and it was in Argentina. But this year it's in Ecuador, I think.
Oh, wow.
But Argentina, a good team. I'm not going to go this year. Yeah. But it was a really fun experience. Got to play doubles, softball doubles, which is not a thing they have in the U.S.
Yeah, so I think I would like to play some doubles. I've played doubles before, but it's a longer court, like it's bigger court.
That's American doubles, and it's a hard ball, right?
Yep.
Softball doubles, which they play in South America, which we played in the Pan Ams, it's so strange. It's with a normal ball, and the court is the same length, but it's just a little wider.
Oh.
So it's much different. Longer. Yeah, it's not longer at all. And it's not, the ceilings are a lot higher.
Yep.
American doubles, it's a lot different than that. So it's something we were kind of at a disadvantage because the South American kids play that all the time.
Yeah.
And we kind of just got thrown in. So it was interesting, but it was really fun. It was a good experience. And Argentina was a really cool country, so.
Yeah. Yeah. It is tough. That's one thing about playing racket sports is you can't really complement your squash game by playing tennis, for instance, in the off season because it will screw up your squash swing, right?
No,
or I'm sure padel would be fun for you to play, but you play that for a couple weeks and then you get back in the squash court and it's different.
It is a little bit different. Yeah, I agree. I think some aspects will help out. Like I would play tennis in the summer, and when you're kind of up at the net, it's a very similar feeling to squash because it's quick, you're volleying. Mm-hmm. But when you go back to the baseline, you have to hit topspin. That does totally screw with you because you're never doing that in squash.
Yeah, you're just whacking the ball.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about senior year at Gilman.
Yeah.
And next year going to UVA, which is awesome. There's a lot of guys going to UVA.
5 of us, including me right now.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy.
I had never been to UVA before until last year. I went down there for a weekend just to check it out and walk around. Man, that campus is amazing.
No, it's beautiful. I went on my visit and just fell in love. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. I mean, they got everything, especially when it's nice out. I was there on a beautiful weekend and people are out and there are restaurants and there's
it's great.
Stuff going on. Every sports team is good.
Yeah.
Right? You go to whatever game. I went to a basketball game. It was awesome.
Yeah, basketball team's struggling a little bit right now, but yes, they do have a good basketball program.
Really good lacrosse. Although they lost to Hopkins last weekend.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I was watching it.
Yeah.
I was watching it. I watched the first half. I actually didn't watch the second half, so I watched the first half when they were up, and then I checked my phone and they lost it. So.
Yeah, well, they'll be a contender anyway, but yeah, a lot of Gilman guys are going down there, which is great to see. It's a tough school to get into now.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's always been, but even so now it's mostly in-state Virginia students, and it's great to see we got like 5 or 6 guys going next year.
And I think so. Maybe 4 guys got in ED, and then I did early action. I didn't do early decision, and probably 3 others or 4 others got in early action. So, and I think some of them. So we might add. My point is we might add some more guys, which will be great.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about that.
What was your recruiting process like for squash?
It was fun. I mean, it's weird because squash isn't an NCAA sport. It's run by the CSA, so it's kind of similar to crew, where it's kind of in that weird in between where there's a different governing body, but it follows all the same rules of kind of NCAA sports. So our recruiting starts September 1st of junior year, and you're emailing a bunch of schools. It's very stressful. They're all emailing you. But I got an email from Virginia, and I also reached out to them kind of at the same time, and we scheduled a visit for end of September, and that was I mean, I think that's what kind of.
That's what did it, was
yeah,
the visit?
It was, they do a good job. Squash is kind of a more low-key sport, so the other schools you're visiting, you don't get all the pizzazz that UVA gets to bring for athletes. So that was kind of what did it for me.
Yeah.
And then you got to meet the team and you went out for lunches with them and hung out with them at night, and they're a really nice group of guys. So it was weird going into it. I didn't have my mind up at all. And then leaving that visit really early at the end of September, I just kind of decided that I wanted.
Was that one of your first visits?
Yeah. So I visited there, and then I visited Dartmouth. And I really enjoyed Dartmouth, but it just wasn't anything like my experience in Virginia. So
yeah,
I committed pretty early. I committed maybe beginning of October.
And Virginia's got that squash complex, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. They have that, and then
tennis,
and actually speaking of padel, they're adding in padel courts.
Are they really?
So it's a resort.
Yeah, wow.
And then they also have, that's where the golf team is and the squash team is and the tennis team is, but it's a resort. Like my parents spent a weekend there over the summer and just for vacation.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Well, good for you. That's exciting.
Yeah.
No, so early on, and
it was definitely strange, but it was very exciting.
Yeah. What's the rest of senior year been like for you? What are you doing here on campus at Gilman?
Right now, so I still have another 2 weeks of squash, which is pretty crazy. But when that's done, I'm taking my senior season off, which is kind of, I feel like I need a little bit of time to relax. I managed lacrosse last year, so I'm not doing that again, but I'm just going to hope to kind of go to as many games as I can in the spring, see a lot of baseball games, see a lot of lacrosse games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's been relaxing, which has been nice, because last year was a lot of squash and a lot of school, and it's been nice to kind of have some time to decompress this year.
Are you sad or excited or a mix of both, or what's your mindset right now, next couple months of school?
I would say I'm pretty sad. I mean, I've been here for 14 years, so it's kind of crazy to spend that much time at a place and then leave. So it is kind of mixed emotions, because I'm really excited to go to Virginia, but it's also like I've known about Virginia for so long that it's kind of a weird feeling that, because when I figured out I was going in October of junior year, it felt like so long before I'd actually end up there. Yeah. So now it's kind of weird that it is only a couple months away. But I don't know. It's tough. I'm definitely a little sad. I feel like, I mean, this place I live 2 minutes away, and like my whole life has been here for 14 years.
Yeah. Wow. So you walk to school?
I did before I had a car, but now I've gotten kind of lazy. Yeah. I drive my sister though, so it makes it a little bit better.
She goes
to Roland Park.
Roland Park. Mm-hmm. She a squash player too? She
does. She's a freshman, but she plays on their team. She's more of a 1 season a year squash player. Okay. But she enjoys it.
Yeah. To be really, really elite at squash, you got to play all year round, you think?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I played soccer sophomore year and loved soccer, but it felt like I was totally falling behind all the other guys.
In squash.
in squash.
Huh.
Just because, I mean, it's tough. I tried to finish soccer practice and then go to a squash practice, but you just have less energy, and you're going against guys that seriously are playing. I mean, squash is kind of a weird sport where a lot of the people are just playing squash.
Yeah.
So I kind of had a disappointing sophomore year because I think that first 3 months I feel like I fell so far behind.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is there burnout? Do you feel burnout with squash towards the end of the season?
A little bit. I would say not for the sport at all. Like I still really enjoy playing and practicing. I feel like you feel a little burnout going to the tournaments every month and having to travel and, missing a day of school and being away for a whole weekend. So I do feel like I kind of have that, but not with the sport at all, just kind of with the tournaments. And it's a stressful weekend, and it's 6 matches in 3 days, usually 5 or 6 matches in 3 days.
Yeah.
And there's a chance that you could lose all 5 of them or 6 of them, and there's a chance that maybe you could win all of them, but it's just like they're all super competitive. There's no easy matches.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
So what separates, do you think, like nationally, the top squash players from the people in the middle of the pack? Is it purely mental at that point? Is there a physical aspect? Is there kind of a cultural aspect? Because I know that, Egyptians are really good at squash, and people from different parts of the world are really good at squash, and maybe they play more all year round. What separates the top group?
Yeah, I feel like that's a tough question. When I'm playing one of the top maybe 5 guys in the country, it just seems like it seems like I can do what they can do for maybe 5 points in a game, and they can do it for an hour. Like it's just they're able to keep that kind of consistency and pace up, but for just way longer than I can keep it up.
You're talking about physical
like
cardio level or everything?
Like how kind of precise their shots are.
Right.
I can maybe do that for a portion of what and they're able to, hit these super precise shots for just so many different rallies, for so many rallies. So I feel like it's small in the actual skill gap. It's just they're able to, I don't know how to explain
consistency.
It exactly. Yeah, consistency. They're just so much more consistent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it takes a step up in college, and then it takes a step up for the top players in college that are then gonna play pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like the actual ability is pretty similar.
Gotcha. Okay. Who are some of the top college programs? I know Virginia's up there. I know Harvard's up there. Trinity's really good, right?
So they just had college nationals last weekend, and for the men, Penn won, which is the first time they've ever won. And there was a St. Paul's kid a couple years ago that plays on that team, so I know him well. He was very excited. But they beat Trinity, and Trinity was the 1 seed going.
Why is Trinity so good? I mean, I know it's a good school, but...
Yeah, they were the first... So they had a 20-year period where they probably won every year. Or
tradition.
Yeah, and I think it was because they were the first team, and their coach was the first coach to realize we can get players from other countries.
Right.
So they had that 20 years where they were recruiting a lot of kids from other countries, and kind of other schools hadn't started doing that. And then maybe 10 years ago, it kind of started evening out a little bit. But I guess it's just they had that tradition that a lot of the international players still decide to go to Trinity. I mean, they have, I don't know the exact number, and I'm guessing here, but at least half or more than their players are not American.
Yeah. And from Egypt, from Australia?
Yeah, from Egypt, from...
England, maybe?
Yeah, there are a lot of the European countries, but it's mainly, I would say it's South America, Egypt, European countries, and then there'll be some countries that randomly have a couple guys. Malaysia, Malaysia has a bunch of good players. India has good players. So college squash is very international. Mm-hmm. It's tough.
Yeah.
I would say at least half of the recruiting spots, are going to international guys.
How about the Virginia team? Where do they get most of their guys? I know there's a guy from Maryland on that team, right?
Yeah, he graduated.
Oh, he did. McDonough guy, maybe?
Cullen Little. He went to McDonough. And there's Matt Katz played. So Virginia had a weird transition because they were a club team. And then in 2017, they became a varsity team, but a lot of those guys on the club team, stuck around and played on the varsity. So they were very American. And I would say 3-4 years ago, because they were all American, because you're not recruiting guys for a club team. So 3-4 years ago, they started making, no, maybe more, maybe 5 years ago, they started making that tradition to recruiting international guys. So right now on the team, there's an Egyptian, a guy from the Czech Republic, a kid from India, a kid from Ireland. So it's pretty international. And then in my recruiting class, there's a kid from Colombia and a kid from Toronto, and then me and another American. But both kids actually go to boarding school in the U.S. So
boarding schools, I'm sure, are really good, and I know the Northeast is really good in the U.S. But how about do you ever get a kid from Seattle or a kid from Utah or a kid from Texas? You said you were in Texas.
So Houston
has good squash.
Kind of popped up recently.
Okay.
And there's squash in California, but yeah, there's not much. There's some squash in Cincinnati, but there's not really much. It's weird. There's not really much in kind of the Midwest at all.
Yeah. I'd love to do a deep dive into the history of squash because I know, obviously, it's big English sport and all of the countries England was occupying. They brought squash, right?
Yeah.
Like Australia and Egypt and India.
We learned a little bit about it. We went to the Philly Racket Club, which is one of the oldest, one of the oldest racket clubs in the U.S. because one of our coaches had a connection there, so we did a little tour. And it started with a sport called rackets, which was started in, I think, prisons in England or somewhere in Europe. And that game's impossible to play. You can't really play it now. Rackets. It's this giant black court, and it's kind of like you're smacking a golf ball that goes so fast that it's almost impossible to hit twice in a row. So that sport's very rarely played. But then I think kind of all the variations, squash and racquetball, all kind of eventually came from that.
Interesting. Let's get to your book rec today.
Yeah.
What do you have for us?
I have the Da Vinci Code.
Oh, interesting.
Which we have a little basement library. I don't know if it's a library. Basement shelf, a big shelf with a lot of books. And I was looking for a book rec a while ago, and my dad said he had read it and he loved it. And I read it, and it was very, very good.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's from what I remember, they talk about The Last Supper by Da Vinci, and they focus in on the I don't know who it's supposed to be, but they say that the figure to the left of Jesus is Mary Magdalene, correct?
So that's they're looking for the Holy Grail, the whole book. And then eventually the detective that kind of gets swooped into the whole thing, she's the Holy Grail because she is an ancestor of, I guess, Jesus Christ. So they think they're looking for the chalice and
right.
And I mean, it's really interesting. And there's a lot of, they talk about the Fibonacci sequences, which I never heard of, and all these kind of codes that Da Vinci used to, I guess, keep everything hidden. And they're trying to decipher these codes, and I don't know, it was very, very interesting.
Love it.
Yeah.
There's a biography about Da Vinci that came out a couple years ago by Walter Isaacson. It's interesting that, he writes really long biographies. He just wrote one about Elon Musk, but he wrote one about Da Vinci that I'd like to read because, you hear all about him and you know a lot of his works, but I'd like to know sort of what was going through his mind and what he thought about and some of the history about Da Vinci.
Yeah. I mean, this book definitely touches on it. It's just, and it was weird reading this book because I kept looking stuff up to see if it was real or not.
Right, but it's fiction. He's making it up.
It's fiction, but I mean, it definitely is all fiction, but it's so well written that you have no idea if what you're reading is really true or not. Because you look things up and it's yes, that actually happened.
And you look at the painting of the Last Supper and you're like, that does sort of look like a female character right there next to Jesus, right?
And it was weird like that because I was probably Googling stuff every 10 pages. There's no way this is real. And then there'd always be some article that says, we don't really know. It kind of hints at something that could be real.
Yeah.
But yes, it is fiction. So it's kind of in that weird in between.
Yeah, it sold a ton of copies. It's bestseller. Wow, great. I'm surprised no one's brought that book in before.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
I loved it. It was
There's a movie too, and I think there's maybe another book written by Dan Brown, Angels and Demons or something. They both have Tom Hanks in the movies. So
I haven't read or watched that second one. I watched the Da Vinci Code after, and it was a very good movie. Tom Hanks is a great actor, so obviously that was good. But yeah, I would say I kept asking my dad. I was like the same thing I was looking up. There's no. Like, do you know what? Like, it's just the weirdest thing because you can't figure out what's real or not.
Right. So Isaac, what's your subject in school? What do you like studying? Are you a history guy? Do you like math, science?
I don't know. I feel like I don't really have. I mean, I didn't love pre-calc last year, and I always thought I was more of a kind of history guy, and I always did better in history. But I'm taking stats this year, and I'm kind of really like that. But I would say probably more of an English history guy.
Okay.
I loved U.S. history last year, and my mom's a historian, so I kind of guess I follow her. Yeah, she works at Hopkins.
Wow.
So.
What does she specialize in?
So they have two historical houses, Homewood and Evergreen, and she runs both of those museums.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she's, I guess, more in like a management position now, but still, I mean, she went to school for history, so I kind of do follow that a little bit, follow her a little more.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't know if I've ever been to Homewood, the museum.
We did so my mom was the connection here. We did a project for I take art class with Miss Sachs, and we did a project where, because Gilman used to be at Homewood. And we did a project where we went through the archives and did kind of a photo merge with Gilman pictures now, and we went to Homewood and took pictures of Homewood now and kind of collaged them with pictures we found in the archives when Gilman was at Homewood. And we had a display in the museum for a couple months.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming in today. It's good to catch up. It's good to learn a little bit about your experience with squash. And hope you enjoy the next couple months of senior year. It's almost spring break. It's almost the end of the year.
I'm excited. Thank you very much.
All right.